Hi, today we're going to review the 2023 horror film Evil Dead Rise, directed by Lee Cronin, and surprisingly enough, having Bruce Campbell as one of the executive producers of the film. Not a cast role, however, but as an executive producer, which not only is well expected in the Evil Dead series for a man of his caliber, but also as somewhat nice addition to the crew of the film. Let me preface this by saying that I'm all familiarized with the original Evil Dead trilogy. I know I'm fond of it like it was the horror themed palm of my hand, with the Deadites and the chainsaw shotgun duo toting, and of course, with the whole goofiness that has eventually become to when it comes to the very gory kills and the sort of demonic possessions coming from the so-called Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon, or as this movie calls it, the Naturum Demonto, which is a kind of original take on the Necronomicon Ex Mortis instead of just calling it the Necronomicon. One nitpick I have for this film, however, is that for an Evil Dead movie, it takes itself a tiny bit too seriously. Don't get me wrong, it's spooky in its own sense, and it's pretty much Lee Cronin's kind of take on an Evil Dead movie compared to original Sam Raimi ones, the ones I'm most fond of in the series. But I expected a little bit more of the goofy side of the original Evil Dead movies, or even the TV show spin-off Ash vs. Evil Dead. Maybe I, of course, got the couple instances of fan service where the Deadites just shout out loud, "I'll swallow your soul!" or "Dead by dawn!" By the end of the film, the final girl, whose name is Beth, I think, played by Lily Sullivan of 2012's Mental fame, shoots a double-barrel shotgun and later a chainsaw covered in blood, which covers a bit of the nostalgic value of the original Sam Raimi films from the series. What I find silly with this film, anyway, and maybe this is a tiny bit of a nitpick here, is that the character cast finds a said book in a buried bank vault opened by a sudden earthquake, which I find too much of a convenient Deus Ex Machina moment where that sets off the whole plot on rails to be conveniently there under their noses alongside the vinyl records that reads the cursed passages of the book and sets forth the plot. But while the movie does mostly try to take itself so seriously, it still doesn't really detach itself from the convenience of how generally silly the Evil Dead plotline has become with the sort of the details like these. So for this movie to embrace just enough of the reference material it's borrowing from is very welcoming. Even though don't want to rain on the horror parade, maybe this is because I'm too familiarized with the Deadites from the Evil Dead series or its sequel spin-off Army of Darkness. But aside of the slightly icky gore of the film, which is piercing just enough to remain uncomfortable but not too uncomfortable to detract from the enjoyment of the film, I don't find the Deadites in this movie scary. I think this may be because I saw Evil Dead Deadites before, and I'm well too accustomed to them. But I miss that this film will make an original take on them, aside of them crawling on ceilings and walls and being glorified possessed demon creatures. Other than that, however, I can say I enjoy this film, especially considering the plot evolves really smoothly without too many filler moments, keeping you on the hook of these horror moments. It's obviously not the best or the Sam Raimi esque of the Evil Dead series, but it's a serviceable, enjoyable entry in the Evil Dead series and a sort of original take into this series without being too obvious with its source material or the references to previous Evil Dead films. And the best thing of this is that Bruce Campbell is the executive producer of this film, so yeah, shop smart, shop as smart. Hello there. I know this is a very unusual video to actually make, but this is a part of the exclusive review series for horror films in 2024 that you can find exclusively on the Goon Fund. So if you want to watch more horror movie reviews like this, which includes one of the 2023 films Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, you should probably check the Goon Fund and become a patron there for €5 a month. So there's that. I know this is I'm kind of slow on content right now because of like I'm focusing on my mental health as of now, and instead of like constantly generating content on a regular basis. But a new video for late Halloween should be in the works. This is probably related to that, and especially I'm watching like a whole lot of horror movies from the 2020s for that. So yeah, I expect something like that soon, and I'll see you in the Goon Fund. I'll see you later.